When Colonel Marcus Stone became the Army's most trusted special operations commander, soldiers relied on him to lead classified missions behind enemy lines. But when his amphetamine addiction and arms-dealing schemes consumed him, he began selling military weapons to terrorist groups and murdering special forces operatives who discovered his crimes, turning elite military units into deadly criminal organizations. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the video. The Nevada desert sun blazed across Fort Carson's Special Operations Compound as Colonel Marcus Stone organized classified weapons manifests and terrorist communication devices for what would become the most dangerous military operation of his 24-year career as the Southwest's most experienced special operations commander and counterterrorism specialist. At 54 years old, Marcus had established himself as the Army's premier special forces leader, controlling elite military units and classified weapons programs that attracted international arms dealers, terrorist organizations, and enemy governments who valued his access to America's most advanced military technology, and his reputation for coordinating the most secretive special operations affecting global counterterrorism and international security activities. Marcus's command office occupied the most secure section of Fort Carson's Special Operations Headquarters, featuring classified briefing rooms, encrypted global communication systems, and weapons storage facilities that allowed him to oversee the Army's most sensitive special forces missions, while maintaining absolute control over military equipment worth hundreds of millions and international operations affecting counterterrorism activities and special forces coordination throughout hostile territories worldwide. The interior of Marcus's office reflected his mastery of special operations and his understanding of military expectations for both mission excellence and absolute secrecy during the most critical counterterrorism decisions affecting America's global security operations, featuring walls displaying special forces, commendations from multiple combat deployments, photographs of classified mission successes, and testimonials from grateful military personnel whose elite training had succeeded through his command expertise and tactical guidance affecting special operations and international military cooperation. But beneath Marcus's reputation for military excellence lay a dangerous combination of prescription amphetamine addiction, systematic arms trafficking, and calculated murder that had transformed his special forces operations into criminal enterprises where threatening operatives and suspicious investigators met their fate through military accidents and witness elimination during vulnerable training exercises and classified missions. "Good morning, Colonel Stone," said Major Sarah Chen, arriving for her weekly operations briefing about ongoing special forces training and classified mission coordination that required Marcus's authorization for weapons deployment and international cooperation affecting elite military operations. Sarah had recently discovered irregular weapons inventory procedures and had begun questioning Marcus's explanations about equipment protocols that seemed to bypass normal Army oversight processes and special operations security requirements. "Good morning, Major Chen," Marcus replied with the military authority and special forces expertise that had made him legendary among Army personnel who viewed him as both tactical commander and counterterrorism specialist, capable of maintaining American military superiority through sophisticated special operations coordination and strategic international missions affecting global security and elite military activities throughout combat zones and hostile territories. Sarah had become Marcus's most dangerous subordinate, not because of her demanding operational requirements or her international coordination responsibilities, but because of her recent discovery of unauthorized weapons transfers and her growing awareness of the arms trafficking operation that Marcus had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate special forces command for Army operations and counterterrorism programs. What Sarah didn't know was that Marcus had been systematically selling military weapons and murdering Special Forces personnel for over 4 years, using his colonel authority and access to classified arsenals to coordinate international arms sales, while eliminating anyone who discovered his weapons trafficking or threatened to expose his criminal exploitation of military resources for terrorist coordination and international arms-dealing networks. Marcus's transformation from respected colonel to calculating killer had begun 6 years earlier, when his prescription amphetamine addiction had escalated from performance enhancement during demanding special operations missions to daily dependency that consumed his substantial military salary and forced him into relationships with international arms dealers who offered enormous payments for access to American military weapons and classified special forces equipment affecting counterterrorism operations and elite military capabilities. His addiction cost over $4,000 per day, while his access to the Army's most advanced weapon systems provided unprecedented opportunities for coordinating arms trafficking operations that generated millions through terrorist organizations and international criminal networks seeking American military technology and special forces equipment affecting global security and counterterrorism effectiveness. His criminal activities escalated when several special forces operatives and military oversight personnel discovered evidence of unauthorized weapons transfers and threatened to report their suspicions to Army headquarters and federal law enforcement agencies investigating arms trafficking targeting America's most sensitive special operations programs and classified military equipment. Marcus murdered his first victim, a suspicious weapons inventory specialist who detected irregular equipment records, by orchestrating a training accident using live ammunition that appeared to be military exercise casualty rather than premeditated assassination designed to protect arms trafficking operations. The success of his first murder convinced Marcus that eliminating threatening military personnel and suspicious oversight investigators was both necessary for protecting his trafficking operation and achievable given his complete colonel authority and his ability to coordinate with international criminal networks who could stage military accidents and eliminate witnesses while providing plausible cover stories involving training hazards and special operations dangers. Over the following 4 years, Marcus murdered 12 additional individuals using various military methods and international trafficking coordination that took advantage of his colonel authority, his access to criminal networks during vulnerable training exercises, and his ability to stage deaths as military accidents or terrorist targeting that occurred during routine special forces activities with personnel who had access to sensitive information that could expose arms trafficking operations. His victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of his criminal activities, their potential cooperation with military authorities, or their knowledge of weapon systems that could expose his international trafficking coordination and systematic sale of military equipment affecting Army oversight and special operations security. His victims included Sergeant Patricia Williams, a Special Forces weapons specialist who had discovered evidence of systematic equipment trafficking and whose training consultation had resulted in fatal explosive accident staged by terrorist assets during routine weapons training. Captain David Foster, who had reported suspicious arms activities and whose Fort Carson meeting had ended in fatal vehicle incident using equipment sabotaged through trafficking networks, and Agent Jennifer Martinez, a federal military oversight investigator who had been tracking weapons theft and whose special operations briefing had resulted in fatal exposure to concentrated drugs disguised as military equipment contamination affecting federal oversight of Army Special Forces operations. The arms trafficking operation had become extraordinarily sophisticated, with Marcus coordinating the systematic transfer of classified American military weapons to international terrorist organizations through carefully arranged special forces training exercises that provided legitimate cover for weapons transfers and equipment coordination affecting counterterrorism operations and international security activities. International training programs with allied nations served as primary arms transfer operations, with Marcus personally coordinating the sharing of classified American weapons technology with terrorist operatives who infiltrated legitimate military cooperation programs and international counterterrorism coordination activities affecting special forces operations and global security development. The most disturbing aspect of the operation was the systematic compromise of America's most advanced special forces, weapons, and counterterrorism capabilities, with Marcus providing terrorist organizations with detailed operational specifications and military equipment that could be used against American forces and allied nations in global conflicts and terrorist operations worldwide. Multiple American Special Forces operatives had been killed in combat as a direct result of Marcus's weapons transfers, with terrorist organizations using the military equipment he provided to target American forces during counterterrorism operations and special forces missions throughout hostile territories and combat zones. Colonel Stone, I need to discuss serious concerns about weapons trafficking and reports of arms dealing connected to your special forces operations, said FBI Special Agent Maria Rodriguez of the Bureau's Counterterrorism Division, arriving at Marcus's Fort Carson Command Center, carrying federal warrants to inspect his weapons procedures and interview him about suspicious military activities. Special Agent Rodriguez specialized in investigating military arms trafficking and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of weapons theft and terrorist coordination affecting special forces operations throughout military installations. Special Agent Rodriguez's investigation represented an existential threat to Marcus's criminal operation, as her federal counterterrorism expertise and access to arms trafficking databases could expose the systematic weapons trafficking operations and connect him to multiple suspicious deaths during military activities and special forces meetings affecting federal oversight and military cooperation. Special Agent Rodriguez, I think there may be some misunderstanding about complex special operations and the unfortunate reality that elite military personnel sometimes experience operational casualties despite advanced safety protocols and federal coordination measures, Marcus said, while discreetly activating a concealed alarm system that would summon corrupt special forces operatives who were part of his trafficking network for emergency elimination of federal law enforcement threats. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in our weapons facility, where I can demonstrate the equipment procedures that might explain these tragic training accidents. Special forces operations involve dangerous military technology that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with classified counterterrorism work and international military cooperation affecting elite operation security. Special Agent Rodriguez agreed to examine Marcus's weapons procedures, not realizing that the colonel was leading her to a secure facility where previous murders had been committed and where Marcus planned to coordinate her elimination using terrorist assets, while staging the scene as federal agent targeting that occurred during arms trafficking investigation, providing cover for her elimination while appearing to be terrorist retaliation rather than deliberate murder by a colonel protecting his weapons-dealing operations. But Marcus's carefully planned murder of the federal agent was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of Army Criminal Investigation Command officers who had been investigating military security breaches and had identified connections to his systematic arms trafficking activities affecting special forces operations and military security programs. CID Inspector Michael Torres had been conducting comprehensive investigation into military weapons trafficking and terrorist infiltration that exploited colonel authority to facilitate arms dealing and eliminate potential witnesses to trafficking operations affecting Army oversight and federal military law enforcement cooperation. Inspector Torres specialized in investigating military crimes and had developed expertise in tracking special forces operations that compromised national security while conducting systematic elimination of threats to arms trafficking operations affecting counterterrorism activities and military operational security. The Army investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple military oversight agencies and counterterrorism task forces who noticed patterns of suspicious weapons transfers and special forces personnel deaths. suggesting terrorist networks were infiltrating military operations to facilitate arms trafficking while eliminating witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as training accidents. Colonel Marcus Stone, "I'm Inspector Torres with Army Criminal Investigation Command," he announced as he entered the weapons facility where Marcus was coordinating Special Agent Rodriguez's elimination. "I have military warrants for your investigation on charges of systematic weapons trafficking, military corruption, equipment theft, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your exploitation of Special Forces authority for criminal operations affecting national security and military integrity." Marcus's reaction to the Army oversight intervention was desperate attempts to maintain his military credibility, as he realized that federal agents and military investigators had been investigating his trafficking activities and connected them to systematic Special Forces personnel murders and terrorist coordination affecting Army operations. Special Agent Rodriguez looked stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the colonel she was investigating for arms trafficking. Her counterterrorism investigation had not only exposed Marcus's trafficking and murder operation, but also prevented her own death at hands of a killer using military authority as cover for systematic elimination of federal agents and weapons trafficking investigation threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed Marcus's arrest revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and sophisticated methods he had developed to exploit colonel authority for systematic military weapons trafficking and murder. Forensic analysis of Marcus's Special Forces operations revealed extensive evidence of his trafficking activities, including sophisticated communication systems for coordinating with terrorist organizations, detailed records of weapons sales worth hundreds of millions, and comprehensive files containing classified military information that had been sold to enemy groups and international terrorist networks, affecting American national security and counterterrorism capabilities. The investigation uncovered Marcus's connections to international terrorist organizations who had been coordinating military infiltration and weapons trafficking operations, while using his colonel access to obtain classified American military technology and eliminate witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as training accidents and special operations casualties affecting Army personnel and federal investigators. Most disturbing was discovery of Marcus's detailed knowledge of military security systems and terrorist operational methods, which he had used to develop increasingly sophisticated approaches for trafficking weapons, while eliminating Special Forces personnel who discovered his trafficking operations or threatened to expose his terrorist coordination activities affecting national security and military operational integrity. Colonel Marcus Stone was ultimately convicted of 13 counts of first-degree murder, systematic weapons trafficking, military corruption, equipment theft, conspiracy to aid terrorism, and numerous other charges related to his exploitation of Special Forces authority for criminal operations affecting national security and military integrity. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout Army Special Forces Command, prompting immediate reforms in military oversight, weapons security monitoring, and colonel addiction prevention measures designed to protect military resources from exploitation by corrupted Special Forces officials involved in terrorist activities. Several other colonels and military officials were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of Special Forces operations and new requirements for weapons verification, security monitoring, and federal cooperation measures, making it difficult for terrorist networks to exploit military authority for systematic arms trafficking operations. Special Agent Rodriguez and Inspector Torres received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in military crime investigation, developing new techniques for identifying weapons trafficking operations and protecting national security from exploitation by corrupted military officials. Major Sarah Chen and other surviving Special Forces personnel required extensive security clearance review and psychological counseling to overcome trauma of learning that their trusted colonel had been systematically selling military weapons and murdering Special Forces operatives while exploiting his authority for terrorist activities. The case prompted comprehensive changes in military regulation, including mandatory federal oversight and addiction screening for colonels with weapons authority, enhanced monitoring of special forces operations and equipment handling, real-time security supervision of classified military activities, and new reporting procedures for suspicious military activities involving national security violations. Marcus's conviction led to increased cooperation between military oversight agencies and federal organizations investigating terrorism, with new protocols designed to identify military systems that might be exploited for systematic criminal activities while eliminating witnesses to military corruption and national security violations. 5 years after Marcus's conviction and life imprisonment, Army Special Forces continued implementing safeguards designed to protect military operations from colonels who might abuse their positions for criminal purposes affecting national security and international cooperation. The colonel who had promised to protect American interests and advance counterterrorism operations had instead used his military authority to commit systematic weapons trafficking and murder, while exploiting Special Forces resources for terrorist coordination, threatening foundations of national security and military operational integrity. Colonel Marcus Stone's final mission had been permanently terminated by comprehensive investigation of Army and federal justice, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even military officials who attempted to exploit their Special Forces authority for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated federal agencies worked together to protect national security from predatory military corruption. The colonel's final mission had concluded with his permanent removal from military service, serving as lasting reminder that those entrusted with special operations must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and that military officials who would exploit Army trust and operational authority for criminal gain will ultimately face full consequences of their betrayal of military integrity and national security. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.